As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down in the river to pray.
Well, welcome to a new week of devotions. We're continuing the theme of 5, but I promise this is the last one. Well, at least for a little bit of a while. This time we're going to look at 5 history books that open up for us the New Testament. We have 4 Gospels, which tell, of course, the story of the life of Jesus. And then the 5th book, which is the book of Acts, which tells the story of the church that Jesus has formed through his Spirit. So we're following a story that begins in Israel with the birth of Jesus, and we're following it right through to a story that ends with Paul in Rome, and that anticipation that he's going to move on to Spain. So the first 4 days, we're going to look at the 4 Gospels, and then on Friday, we'll finish up by having a look at Acts. And each day, we're seeking to relate to the overall themes which each of the books and the writers bring to us. So a good question to begin with, I guess, is why are there 4 Gospels? Why not just one story that tells the whole story of the birth, life, ministry, teaching, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus? Why do we need 4? Well, I guess we all realize that people's experiences, the way that they relate to something or to someone, whilst there may be commonality between the way that they experience things with others, often there are parts that are unique, things that only they have experienced or thought about as they've gone through that whole process. People may well emphasize a particular aspect of the whole experience, which is reflective of something that mattered to them, but maybe didn't quite matter so much to the others who have shared in that experience as well. Imagine going to an event with 3 friends, and then, of course, meeting up somewhere to talk about it later. Well, of course, there would be a lot that you'd all be able to identify with, things that you've shared as a common experience. But also, for each individual, there would be probably something that's unique to them, something that was important to them on the basis of their experience, or something that they observed which the others didn't. That's the case with the 4 stories that we have of Jesus. Each of the stories has a particular focus, something that really matters to the storyteller, as well as sharing a lot of common stories, a lot of common material. Each writer, of course, is an individual. They have and they are and they will be going through different experiences. Each one has a different personality. And I guess all of that comes through the way that they tell their story. And I think that together makes the gospel stories very authentic and very grounded in the personalities of the writers and their own personal experiences at the time that they began to write down their particular stories of the life of Jesus. So this morning we're going to start with Matthew, and Matthew is beginning to unfold his story with a genealogy. And you'll find that in Matthew 1, verses 1 through to 17. And once more, I've called on my old mate David to come and help.
This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife, Solomon the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, Abijah the father of Asa, Asa the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Jehoram, Jehoram the father of Uzziah, Uzziah the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, Ahaz the father of Hezekiah, Hezekiah the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amon, Amon the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jeconiah and his brothers at the time of the exile to Babylon. After the exile to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel the father of Abihud, Abihud the father of Eliakim, Eliakim the father of Azor, Azor the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Achim, Achim the father of Elihud, Elihud the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Maphan, Maphan the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Thus there were 14 generations in all from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah.
What do we know about Matthew? Well, of course, he was one of the first disciples of Jesus, so we can assume that he's mainly writing from first-hand experience, though he's probably drawing on some common material that existed at that time, as well as Mark's gospel story, which had already been written by the time Matthew starts to pen his own account of the story of Jesus. What is it that is distinctive about his story of Jesus? Well, primarily, he wants to tell us that Jesus is the long-promised King of the Jews. But he doesn't just want us to grasp that idea. He really wants us to understand what kind of King of the Jews Jesus is proving to be. So throughout his story, he connects the life and the words and ultimately the death and resurrection of Jesus with some of the Old Testament scriptures. Jesus is constantly shown by Matthew to be fulfilling Old Testament prophetic passages that anticipate how the true King of the Jews will act and think and ultimately lay down their life as a sacrifice for the sake of the whole world. Jesus is the long-promised Messiah. And that's why I think Matthew starts his story in a surprising way. He begins with a genealogy, perhaps not the most gripping way of engaging his listeners and readers with his story. But what he's trying to do, and he's very keen to do this, is for his readers, including us, to understand that Jesus is part of a long story about God's plan and purposes of salvation. Jesus is grounded in and connected to a very long story of God's relationship with the people of Israel, with the Jewish nation. And of course, that's very important to Matthew as he wants us to gain fresh understanding of how the King of the Jews will act and speak and relate to those that he engages with. Genealogies are quite interesting. In the chapel here at Queen's Road Baptist Church, there's a board that you can see, and on it you have all the names of the ministers of Queen's Road Baptist Church over the last 100 years or so. Some might call it Rogues Gallery. Each one, of course, was an individual, and they brought something different to the church. They helped to shape the church to what it is today. But also, each one is part of the whole story of Queen's Road Baptist Church. In the archives that we hold, we have deacons' minutes that go right back to the establishment of Queen's Road Baptist Church. Each deacon was an individual, but of course they were part of a greater story. They were part of a whole story. In one sense, each of those form their own kind of genealogy. And then on top of that, we have marriage records, which go way back. We have church meeting attendance lists. We have membership lists. We can even discover who is the longest serving member of the church at this present moment in time. I won't tell you who that is because it might well embarrass them. We have magazines that have been produced by the church that record names and activities, both past and present. All of that reminds us that the church has a long history, a connected history. It's got a whole story to tell. We're all individuals, as every one of those people have been, but they're also part of the genealogy of Queen's Road Baptist Church. They are part of this greater story. And like Matthew and all the other gospel writers, we too are part of that. We each have our individual insights and, of course, our individual gifting. But we are all part of a greater story, the story of God's work through this particular church. As with Jesus, we are unique, but also we're part of this greater story that had been taking place over, in Jesus' case, thousands of years, in our case, just over 100 years. So I think the challenge is to reflect on that this morning and to think about how we can continue to play our part as individuals in the greater story of Queen's Road Baptist Church and its community and partners. None of us are the whole story, but we are part of the story. And how will we carry on telling that story in the days that lay ahead?
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way.